Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Baby, just do the best you can.
You know, some of them listen to you.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
So, hey, everyone. Welcome to Maxable's webinar. We are just going to wait a couple more minutes before we get started. So everyone just kind of sit tight, and then we'll get started at 7. All right.
Oh, well, we can say hello. Hi, Caitlin. You want to hey, Jared, how's it going?
Good. How's it going for you?
Good.
Hi, Jared. I'm Lydia. I haven't met you, but I've spoken to you on the phone.
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
So everyone, just for some context, my mom is on the left side of the screen with Lydia.
I didn't act like Lydia did. I'm just bumming it.
She's not an official panelist, but
yeah, so I'm just poking my head in. But Lydia put makeup on. I did not. Okay.
I did not. I look this beautiful all the time.
And Jared, I know you didn't put makeup on for us.
No.
It would the beard would hide it anyway.
Yeah.
Is it a real beard, Jared?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
my question.
Of course it is.
Awesome. Okay.
If there happens to be a cat that jumps up here, just ignore that. So.
Okay. Well, if a dog is whining, just ignore that. My dog is right down here. She's been ignored all day because we are in the throes of finishing my granny flat, which is why we're here.
Yeah.
So she's been ignored, and she's been barking today. A 14-year-old dog who hasn't gotten any attention. She's not happy. She doesn't care that the place is looking beautiful. She wants attention.
Yeah. You know, the golden retrievers are very high maintenance.
Yes. Yes. I just want
this one is especially a diva dog.
Especially.
We won't get into the details on that for everyone, but you just know.
I'm surprised your mom didn't want us to do a special room for Minerva in the granny flat, her own space.
Yeah, she doesn't understand all of the complexities of construction.
No. But she's wandered in there now quite a few times.
Yeah.
A new place to shed hair.
Yeah. Okay, so it's just about 7 o'clock now, so I think we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen here so that everyone can see. There we go. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. This is our second ever Maxable webinar, and I am very excited because I have 2 very special guests with me tonight. One is Jared Basler of Basis Studio. He's designed over 47 ADUs in San Diego and San Diego County, so that's a huge number. And Lydia Majet, who is an interior designer. And the thing that the 2 of them have in common is that they both worked on my mom's accessory dwelling unit project, which is just about wrapped up. She's peeking her head in there. Just about wrapped up. And so we're really excited to show it to you guys this weekend. For those of you who are joining us from San Diego, we'll probably see some of you guys this Saturday and Sunday. Lydia, Jared, and some of the other team will be there to talk to you guys and answer your questions around accessory dwelling units. So we're really excited about that. For those of you who are interested in joining that event and didn't get tickets, we are sold out. But email contact@Maxable Space, and we'll do another viewing of that unit that you can at least come and see it and check it out for yourself. So if that's something that you want to see, you know, email me, we'll make it happen. It's contact@maxablespace.com. So before we dive into all the great content that we have planned for you guys tonight, which I'm really stoked about, I want to talk just a little bit about Maxable. So Maxable is an educational hub. We help homeowners understand the rules and regulations and the whole process around building a granny flat. So, you know, these are big projects. You know, most of us don't have a background in real estate development. And so if you need to kind of figure out, how do I get started? Who should I hire? How much is this going to cost me? Where do I get financing? What's the timeline for something like this? What are my construction options? all of those kind of things Maxable can help answer for you. So we have paid site consultations as well as a ton of free tools and resources on our website. So I hope those are something that you guys will take advantage and take a look at. So now on to our webinar. This is, like I mentioned, our second webinar that we've done with Maxable, and I'd like to kind of make this more of a routine thing. So if this is something that you guys enjoy and get value out of, let us know so that we can plan more of them or suggest topics that you would love to hear more about. So today we're going to really focus on design and ADU design, both kind of from the architectural perspective and from the interior design perspective. So before I introduce, Jared is going to be our first speaker here, but before I introduce both of them, I wanted to show you guys, this is the project that they both worked on jointly together. So this is my mom's garage, and it has an attached guest quarters. So this is the before picture, the kind of uninspiring, you know, looks like any old garage you'd ever see and you wouldn't take a second glance at it. Here's 5 weeks into construction. So you can see that it's starting to take shape a little bit here. You know, we've busted out some of the wall and removed the garage door. They've added some structural beams to the inside. This particular project was especially challenging because this granny flat, or this garage, needed about $17,000 worth of waterproofing before we got started. So despite garages being the most cost-effective way to get a second unit on your property, there's still some substantial costs that can go into these projects. And this is the almost done version. So you can see we put in some really lovely French doors and a deck, and we've got some landscaping and planting going in. So, and then on the right here is, the kitchen is all done now. We're actually finished with construction on everything, but, this is just kind of a glimpse as to what's to come.
It looks so much better than my photograph. It looks fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're really, really thrilled with the results of this project, and just honestly, I think in shock and awe and how cool it really is. I mean, you would never know walking into it that this used to be a garage. And so we're going to talk about some of the design features that went into this project in particular, and things that you guys can incorporate into your own projects. So without further ado, I'm going to turn my presenter screen over to Jared, and he's going to jump in and talk to us about how he goes about and designs ADUs.
All right. So, second. All right. So, as we get into this designing for small spaces, that term is really general. I wouldn't necessarily consider your mom's project a small ADU. I've done down to 12 by 18. Got a 12 by 23 ADU here at my place in La Mesa. And yeah, so it's kind of a relative term, designing for small spaces. I kind of wanted to go with a quick little, some images of things that you see on Pinterest, on HGTV, kind of just walk you through the difference between reality and reality shows. So everyone always kind of talks about how they want a nice loft with a spiral stair, and you know, it's one of those things that in certain circumstances it's the only option, and in that case it can be a good option, but realistically you aren't getting any furniture up those spiral stairs, and as we're talking about these as dwelling units, it's really something to keep in mind, that there's some great design options that are not really practical. The closer version to reality, at least you can throw a bed up over that railing on the right hand side, and try to get some furniture up there. But realistically, we still, if you're thinking about a loft, you've probably seen it in things like this nice little tiny home that whether it's on wheels or not on wheels, a lot of times when we're talking about small spaces, the frame of reference people have is looking at tiny homes and stuff that they see on TV. So why can't we really have this? There's a ton of reasons that I'll get into later. But realistically, it comes down to the fact that we have to design for code. And as it stands right now, ship ladders belong at sea. It's not something that is approved by the building code for a habitable space. So, really think about safety. Think about the fact that this is, there's liability in designing and building a dwelling unit that someone's going to live in. And we want to make sure that, safety is, one of the first things we're thinking about. So this takes me back to architecture school, where we used to design in a vacuum like this. And this is the kind of thing that you see in reality shows, or just in general, tiny homes, stuff like that. You get something that's just designed out in the field somewhere, with no real context for where it actually sits. You're also framing the view so that you can hide all the mechanical equipment, hide everything that you don't want people to see. Whereas in reality, we live in San Diego. The reason why we build small, in a lot of reasons, is because we're on a site like this, where we have site constraints. Maybe we're building small because we have budget constraints, or maybe it's, a lifestyle choice, or it's a trend right now. But in reality, this is what our sites look like that we're building small on. So this is actually that 12 by 18 unit that is under construction right now. It's a old workshop that we're converting to a ADU, and it is for a family member who's going to be there kind of as a caregiver or as a nanny caregiver for their kid. But this is really the reality of what those small spaces look like. You can't even find the place back there.
12 by 18, for those of you who aren't as quick at math, is only 216 square feet. So that's a particularly small space.
Yes. So the first kind of question we really want to find out is, why are you building this? Who is it for? Because there's different design considerations that that we take into account for each of these different, users. So if it's a rental, that's where you're going to find a lot of times trying to get the most out of it, while also building it for the least amount of money. So you're going to be looking at things like livability and liability, because just because you can get an extra couple $100 a month for turning a studio into a 1-bedroom doesn't always make it a livable space. So we like to design spaces that are livable, that people want to call home. But also as a rental, you have to understand the insurance and liability side of things. And so this comes into account when we're talking about stuff like rooftop decks, things that for your own home, you might choose to include into the project, but for the sake of a rental, probably is not the best thing to add in. And then privacy and replacement costs. Replacement costs really when it comes down to appliances and sizing of spaces so that you can easily replace things that get broken. If it's more of a guest suite for family or friends who come into town every once in a while, we look at it more as, how do you share that space and how do you have a more experiential space? And then flexibility. This is where we tend to see things where you can utilize Murphy beds or things that the ADU space can be more flexible and not have dedicated use. When it comes down to something you're building for yourself, you really want, that's where you're going to spend a little bit more money and want to make sure that it has the max usability for you. Also privacy, because if you're typically, if you're going to be building one of these for yourself, you're probably going to be renting out the primary. And then spatial efficiency, this is where we can get more into custom fabrication, and it makes a little bit more sense. So this is a good and a bad example all on the same project. This is a garage conversion with a nice little add-on for the kitchen and bath. We decided it's right under 500 square feet. We wanted to get all of the plumbing and fresh ground, and so we pulled the kitchen and bath off. And while I argued valiantly to turn this into a studio, the client wanted to make it a 1-bedroom, which means we have about 7.5 foot wide bedroom. Not ideal, not what I would do, but I was able to at least get them to provide a nice little outdoor living space, so that they could have the people renting this could have a nice private outdoor space that was kind of an extension of that living area.
And I just want to chime in there for a second. When we talk about, construction costs on these projects are obviously quite high. And so if you are looking at something and you're wanting to rent it out, having some kind of outdoor space is relatively cheap square footage. If you compare that to the cost of having, say, a bigger bedroom or a bigger living room or whatnot, and it can add a lot of value, especially in, a place like California where our weather most of the year is quite pleasant.
And so as a rental, this obviously fulfills the need of that homeowner wanting to rent out a 1-bedroom, but it's not the most livable unit, to be completely honest. And obviously I can design as much as I'd like, but it ultimately comes down to the client and the homeowner and what they're looking for. So when we start talking about guest units and how we incorporate those into, the property, this is where you can have a little bit more flexible spaces. We see a little bit more studios in guest units, simply because the spaces can be reconfigured as needed. So the unit on the left is our kind of template design for City of San Diego. It's a 476 square foot studio that can be reconfigured into a 1-bedroom if necessary, but it's a nice contemporary unit. And then the one on the right is the first ADU that went through the city of Palm Springs. This was a conversion with a couple of add-ons over the years, and it was designed as a guest unit that they could share with their friends and family. And so that's why it's more shared outdoor space, more trying to think about how you incorporate it into the primary. And then for the a unit that you're designing for yourself, this is where you get into making it the space for you, and designing for custom fabrication, built-ins, that kind of stuff that you can really take advantage of the space, while understanding that those are going to be limitations going forward. So the use of nooks, use of walls becomes something that we like to encourage. Open concept design works really well on large spaces, but in small spaces we need some walls in order to be able to hang stuff, be able to make the spaces work for the specific use. So getting back to that original picture we were looking at, that nice little tiny home loft, let's talk about some of the limiting factors that we typically run into. And a lot of these are code issues. We've got, if we take a look at that picture, starting at the top, we've got a ceiling that is exposed and probably has no insulation in it. Typically when we're doing these small units, we've got to get a lot of insulation in the ceiling. And so a lot of times we end up having, if we have a flat lid ceiling, we'll end up having insulation in the lid and then insulation also in the rafters. So it's actually double insulation in the ceiling.
And the reason why there's so much insulation, everyone, is because all new construction in California has to meet certain energy requirements called Title 4 regulations. So the energy these Title 24s weren't really designed with ADUs in mind. And so it can be harder for the small spaces to meet those requirements. And those Title 24 regulations are changing in 2020, which is something that we put out in our newsletter recently, saying that if you want to avoid having to put solar in your ADU to meet those Title 24 requirements, you need to get your project started this year. It doesn't have to be built this year, but you need to get it into permitting this year.
Yeah. And so as we start talking about, the rest of the kind of limiting factors, the energy efficiency is a huge thing, especially as we look at garage conversions and existing spaces that we're trying to convert into ADUs. We end up having the most trouble with existing structures that are already built. So especially stuff that's, maybe was built illegally, the quicker you can get that thing permitted, the better, because it's going to get a lot more difficult next year. But back to the loft, this idea that you can have a loft with a ladder and no guardrails, no handrails, not proper ceiling height. Those are all things that look really good on TV, but we have to design for codes. We have to design for the building code. And so we need a normal stairwell, maximum, rise and run of 7.75 inches and minimum tread of 10 inches. So there's, as you start looking at the space and what you'd have to do to make it a space that you could permit as an ADU, you start losing the window on the right hand side, or that's probably a sliding glass door, because you've got to pull stairs out now. I've got to have a guardrail up on the loft. I've also got to raise the ceiling height up on the loft. So there's a lot of things that as we start getting into design, small spaces have opportunities, but we want to make sure that we're doing things the right way. The design on the right-hand side is a design for a client that I walked away from because I couldn't support a 7-foot living room. As we start looking at 500 square foot 2 bedrooms, it's really difficult to make that work, especially in an existing. In this case, we were working around an existing garage. So understanding that there's space that we can, if we have all the space in the world, like sitting out on a hill, we can create a 500 square foot 2 bedroom that works. But when we're confined within an existing footprint, that's what really limits the ability to come up with those 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom spaces.
And I have been in a 2 bedroom, 640 square foot unit, and it was extremely tight.
Yeah.
So
and
in my
not
mind, 500 square feet seems a bit crazy, but
and not to mention the fact that these are, in most cases, these are right on the property line. And for, when we talk about limiting factors, I've got to have, 3 feet to, between 0 and 3 feet from the property line, I can't have any windows. Mm-hmm. Between 3 and 5 feet, I can have windows, but they have to be protected, which makes them a lot more expensive. And so as you're working through all of these issues, there's a lot of, as we make design decisions, there's a lot of different things that impacts. And that's, working with someone who's experienced and understands all of the different codes is what, helps you get through that with something that will work for you. Mm-hmm. And then let's talk really quick about the budget limiting factor and the fact that we see these all the time online and on TV of, a tiny home for $11,000 DIY. Doing it yourself really doesn't save you money unless you are a contractor. It's the construction costs are reflective of the actual liability and what we have to do to meet code. So, remember that it's a process that we've got to design around so many different constraints, not just what you would like to design, but also the things that we're allowed to design. And there's a lot of ways to creatively use a small space, but it comes down to really why are you building it small? You know, is it a budget decision? Is it a lifestyle choice? Is it site constraints? Because each of those has a different impact on how we look at, you know, designing that space for you.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think HGTV has really done viewers kind of a disservice in the sense that, you know, people kind of buying into this pipe dream that they can build a little tiny house on wheels for $50,000 or live in an air, you know, build some cute little Airstream kind of trailer in their backyard and live, you know, mortgage free in that. And the reality is that you cannot put a tiny house on wheels in your backyard and legally live in it.
Yeah.
It has to have a permanent foundation. It has to go through a permitting process. And a lot of these tiny houses that are being built on wheels, after they're being built, the homeowners are kind of realizing that there's actually almost no legal spot in which they can park and live those. Because even in RV parks, a lot of times they don't meet the insurance requirements of the RV park. So again, you know, I think the point that Jared brings up is what our vision of reality is, you know, or what our vision is on kind of these TV shows and what's actually possible are two very different things. But with that being said, even with these limitations of building code, there's still some really unbelievably cool designs and things that you guys can incorporate to make these smaller spaces feel large and open and warm and welcoming.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Jared, is that your last slide?
Yes, it is.
All right, so we're going to listen to Lydia now. So Lydia is an interior designer. She's been an interior designer for over 22 years. And when I was trying to figure out how I was going to intro her, we started talking about, well, what's the difference between an interior decorator and an interior designer? And she said, oh, no, don't call me a decorator. So an interior decorator is someone who really just kind of does like finishes and furniture and whatnot. They don't have to go through any formal training. They're probably not up to date on, you know, codes or ADA compliance or something like that, versus an interior designer, you know, studies under an architect, goes to school for that, can draft, to do things like that. So, and anyway, Lydia has been the interior designer helping work on my mom's project, whereas Jared was the ADU designer, the architect that worked on that project. So without further ado, Lydia, we would love to hear what you have to say about ADU design and designing for small spaces.
Okay, great. Thanks, Caitlin. Am I live now?
You're live.
Girl.
Thanks,
Go.
Caitlin. And that was very informative, Jared. So what we're going to do a little bit about granny flat. I mean, garage conversions mostly. I mean, there's so many options for, as Jared discussed, of how you go about whether it's new structure or garage conversion. But because we're gonna use Lynn's basic existing garage, that was on her property, and kind of just play off of that, since I already have plans, you know, basic existing drawings of square footage, and just talk about different ways that we can change that interior budget-wise and for use-wise. So, because that's really, as Jared discussed, you know, the client has to decide what's their goal, what is the purpose of doing this alternative dwelling. So in Lynn's case, she had her purposes, and we're really not going to address Lynn's final design. We're just going to look at kind of ideas from this. So this was her existing 600 square foot garage. It had an existing small bedroom, bath, closet kind of guest room, and Lynn had used it for her office for years and years. And then the left side was open garage. I think it was a 1.5, Jared, would you say, width garage? That's my guess. And so as you can see, that's what we started with. So then we'll go to the next slide. And as Jared was talking about, if your intent is just as a rental income, at least currently, to just have that extra income, I was just showing how we could take, you know, keep the existing wall that was there, add some additional storage closets for whomever might rent the property. And then my suggestion is to keep it as simple as possible. That's how I would approach it. And doing this in such that if down the road you decide you want to convert this to an in-laws quarters, or one of your grown children move there, and then you don't have as many things to change. And I would probably approach it, if my budget was slim, as Caitlin said, I would probably do off-the-shelf kind of kitchen, kitchen cabinets, basic, refrigerator, stove, apartment kind of models that are easily to replace and not as costly. Or you could even buy a prefab kitchenette, which come in linear feet, and they are cheaper to install. But then, of course, you would have a difference on replacement. And then same thing with the bathroom. Maybe do prefab beds, prefab showers, and not big expenses in doing so. And then just pick off the shelf finishes, which can keep it non-complicated. And then I would probably put my money to the exterior and try to landscape so that it looks attractive, so your neighbors think it looks good and it's rentable because it's got some private space and landscaping and so forth. And I think at that beginning phase too, you might want to think about, do we want this to have some ADA compliant things like one level floor? And if the front elevation, even though we're showing in this plan steps and like a deck, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, you might want to make sure that you have a 36-inch door opening, and the doors between the rooms interior have the 36-inch passage so a wheelchair could fit through, and that a ramp could be added onto that porch if we needed it, so that you had, easy access if you are renting it.
And just to chime in for a minute here,
right.
So I totally agree with everything Lydia is saying in this, and I want to encourage you guys all, when you're thinking through your goals of planning out your accessory dwelling unit, not just what your short-term goals are, but what are your long-term goals as well. So, Lydia mentioned ADA compliance. If when we survey people, we've worked with hundreds of homeowners across the state who are interested in building ADUs. We do a lot of site consultations with them. And one of the things we always ask is, okay, what's the immediate goal and what's the long-term goal? So the immediate goal might be a rental, like what Lydia's talking about now. But then the expectation is maybe in 5 or even 10 years, you have parents that might be moving into something like this. So it's really important to think through what the short-term and long-term goals are on the upfront, because designing something ADA compliant when you're working from scratch is not any more expensive than designing a regular unit. But if you're going back then and trying to retrofit a bunch of stuff and widen your openings and add additional support in the bathroom and no thresholds and lower countertops and things like that, the retrofit of that can be very costly.
Right, exactly. Okay, so then we're just going to move again to the next slide, which is also the same footprint, and this is just like basically showing like you could, if someone rented the previous model that just had the kitchen and bathroom done, they could furnish it like this, bringing in their own tables, sofas, whatever. So I just wanted you to get a sense of how much fits into a 600 square foot. This is pretty big for, and Caitlin, I can't remember what the limitations on the square footage is for the dwellings here in San Diego.
Yeah, it's dependent on your jurisdiction. So every jurisdiction is going to have their own rules and regulations about max square footage you can build. In San Diego, it's 1,200 square feet. In Los Angeles, it's 1,200 square feet. In San Jose, it's up to 900 square feet, and it's dependent on how large your lot is. So if you're curious about how large you can build, you can go to maxablespace.com, and we have a regulations portal, and we have all the rules and regulations listed out for various jurisdictions in California.
So that's great. So this could be what someone could do if they rented the space, just so they can really totally have a kitchen and a work area, table work area combination, a sitting area, a bedroom, and a full bath, and even a location if the homeowner or the renter wanted to put a washer dryer, stackable unit. And so and enough storage to, hopefully cover their needs. And then also the homeowner might say, well, I might furnish it and rent it out, which could be long-term or short-term. And this could also just be a representation of how the the homeowner might do it as a furnished unit. Okay, and then the next slide is kind of more customization. So if the client needs it for their personal use, maybe their kids are going to be coming in and out and staying there some, or they're going to have guests. Then this is just showing a little more custom built-ins and so forth, like a larger kitchen with more custom cabinet sizes, a built-in work area with, tons of storage, and built-ins in the bedroom. So all the built-ins start costing more money, but it just helps space saving, within, giving them more floor space and not so much furniture use. So that's kind of what this slide represents. Okay. And then I just wanted to talk about, since we're talking mostly about granny flat conversions, some of the things that I think, and I know there's constraints, but because every project's different, but these first couple of pictures I'm just going to flash through are just, I think, bad conversions from the street view. Your neighbors, what they see, it's obvious that it was a driveway with a garage and closed in. And so I just want people to be aware, to try to think through and, work with your architect or designer to come up with, some landscape or some ways to make that curb appeal more not so obvious that we just totally converted a garage. And also, I think there's some safety issues in this. If you did still park cars there, that if there's not some sort of barrier, if someone just happened to put their car into forward instead of reverse and ran through the building, I think that's, definitely a safety issue. So it's just something to think about, to do something more creative there. And this is just a simple before and after of a garage that was converted. The lower picture shows, a window, and at least they've done some landscaping. I think the gravel and concrete squares kind of help divide that up, and maybe you're not pulling your car as far up to the garage space as shown here, in the original plan. Same thing here, just showing kind of good examples and bad examples of how you can help make, and of course your driveway and all these things are factors. So you really have to look through what are some options we can do for my particular project. But again, the left-hand picture shows the garage. The right-hand picture shows whether it's a window. Again, don't love the top one. The bottom one, I think they did a good job to wrap the drive and try to match the architecture of the existing house.
And I think that's one of the things that I love about my mom's garage conversion so much, is that you really can't tell that it used to be a garage, adding the deck and then taking some of the kind of architectural design elements for the rest of the house and kind of incorporating that. Like one of Lydia's ideas that she had was, let's do a pop of color on the doors. So the doors are kind of this deep red color. And she painted not just the accessory dwelling unit doors that color, but all the exterior doors to the main house. So it really kind of creates this cohesiveness that
Right.
makes you feel like it was always designed that way.
Right. I think that's the goal, is, because you want your neighbors to be happy about your garage conversion as well. And if you're renting it, you want the renters to feel that they have their own space and privacy, and that it feels good. I mean, that it just feels nice for everyone. So these next slides, we're going to kind of go through them quickly, or just examples of either connected or detached garages that have been converted, and just how they've incorporated the home. Now, my taste is to kind of make the home and the garage as much related as possible. That's just my sensibility. I like that it feels, what's the word, Lynn? Yeah, connected, or, related.
And just this particular example isn't a garage conversion. This is just a standalone accessory dwelling.
So you know this project.
Yeah, I'm familiar with this
project. Okay, but I love how the two structures relate. I love the shared courtyard, the openness. So we're gonna go through them. I just want you to see how landscaping and just some outdoor space really ties the units together. So same here. You know, if this were a frontal drive-in garage, they obviously had enough garage driveway space to remove the driveway and then do some landscaping to funnel you into the new unit. I think it's beautiful. This, I think, was an alley garage unit, and I love that they just have done these great big decks that just invite you in. So again, it's just the visuals or the connection. There may not be things that are right code wise, but as far as just the general feeling, it's just to encompass everything. Again, this unit is just really a duplication of the house, and I just think that's, to me, I love that sensibility that it's just all connected and looks intentional. Again, with this is a 2-story, addition, but I love, again, that they've kept with the same integrity of their original architecture, which is on the right-hand side. Again, same kind of thing, landscape, connection. It just feels like one giant house. I just think this is really beautifully landscaped too. It's simple. It looks like they used the garage opening and just made it very open, but did a really sweet landscaping with it. I just think this one, the same, it's great layout. I just love the feeling of the landscaping. So you're creating all these great spaces between the units that are inviting and really, I didn't know everybody doesn't have this kind of budget, but I think it's the dream, to see how close you can get to doing something that feels good to you and that's usable space. Same thing with this, So, and then, and this one's like a very, more modest. It's just, like an enclosed privacy fence with a small little garden, which I think is really nice if you can fit something like that in for your if you're renting or for your guest or whomever, however you're using it. So the goal is just to try to make it as attractive from the exterior, from street view as possible. And although now my personal sensibility, I love this additional unit as far as the great architectural style of it. What I'm not comfortable with the relationship between the existing house and that structure. I feel that it would be nicer if they had more of a relationship to each other. Although if you had a lot of land, I think this would be an incredible, dwelling to put somewhere else on your property that's not so adjacent to your home. So, and then the rest of these, I'm just going to go through quickly. They're just space saving ideas. And, most of these are pretty custom. So this is not going to be like a big savings. This is if you're kind of doing something for yourself. But, where you can have a single washer dryer unit. It can fit into your bathroom. You can still have bathroom storage above. This picture's a little stretched, so it's not really that big of a bathroom, but there are ways to squeak those into little cubby holes and niches. Talked about if you, again, if you can fit a Murphy bed somewhere, it doesn't have to be a giant one. I love how this one's built into the whole TV unit here. I think open bookshelves are a great way, closed or open, to add storage into your unit if you have the room and the budget. Again, I'm showing this picture just because if you can do bookshelves and fit them around windows and whatever, to create additional storage. I love furniture sitting in the front of it. A lot of people are afraid to put
That's what you're doing with
furnishings.
mine.
Yeah, we're doing that at Lynn's. I think it adds a lot of warmth. You can move, as long as your furniture pieces are small, which typically they're going to be in a dwelling. It's easy to move them to access the space behind it. But I love the look. I think it feels warm and inviting, and it is very functional as well. This is just saying if you can't afford all the built-ins, you can still go to IKEA or some other place and try to find units that you can put together to create that same additional storage and still have furnishing very close in hand, and it could even be in front there. This is just showing you kind of what we're doing at Lance, where you can put,
Yeah, and it looks really good. I'm excited about
and you
it.
can put baskets and all kinds of things. So if you're just needing more storage, and of course this all depends on what you're using the unit for. If you have a little niche, like I think, you can do a little desk or like built-in beds, which I know we've discussed. But so this is just a little built, and this is under stairs. So if you have a 2-story, or make use of the space wherever you can. This is a workspace under stairs. This one, of course, has no handrail, which is not to code, but I like the idea that they built the part of the kitchen under the stairs. And so if there's a way to do that, incorporate, I think that's a really cool idea. This is a little dog kennel under stairs. Another great thing, if if your personal needs are, you have a dog, make a little dog house under the stairs. Built-in banquettes are great. They serve many purposes. You can have storage. You can have a table and use it as workspace. You can dine at it. You can take the table out, and especially if you had some sort of foldable table, and use it for additional seating if you needed it. And bed niches, same kind of thing. Storage below. You could do something like this in a living area where this could be extra seating, table moves, a more flexible table, but you could, to create as much flexibility and storage, if it's something like this, you could move the table out and have seating, or this could be a pull-out bed. So it's just trying to be creative with what you want to try to achieve and squeeze it all in there. Same thing, built-in bed and closet. I love this, doing drawers in stairs. It's not inexpensive to do, but it's great extra storage if you do happen to have 2 stories going on in your unit. And this is kind of an attic conversion with a built-in bed frame, bed niche, I should say. A loft, well, same thing. I know we'd have to do code on the stairs, but I like the idea that there's storage below the ladder there, but it would be stairs, basket storage. Same with these, just showing storage built in under some sort of staircase, or a desk under, a floating bed.
Lydia, where are all the railings? I don't see any railings.
Well, I just said, it's not about the railings, it's about what we can do under the stairs.
Agree.
So that's what I was just saying.
Agree.
Yeah. It's not. It's how to use the space under the stairs.
Right.
And so these would be to code with railings. I think that we could do a bunk bed kind of thing with a ladder.
Yeah.
Bunk beds are fine. It's more that when it's a permanent ladder,
right,
it can only be used to access non-habitable space, so storage space.
Right.
And I know a lot of homeowners will opt to call it a storage loft.
Right.
And I completely understand
right,
the reasoning behind that, but it's
right,
also a huge liability issue that we want to make sure everyone understands the choices that they are making.
right,
Yeah.
right.
She's trying to be creative.
Yeah,
and there will be a railing.
Right, and it's not, it's when you're just trying to find stock pictures that I'm just talking about the storage below,
Right.
and not so much like
She's not advocating.
I'm just giving you a hard time, Lydia.
It's good to let the
Take a deep
people who are
breath, Jared. Take a
listening.
deep breath.
Well, it's good to let the people know who are listening that this, these are definite issues that you have to consider, and that we're not trying to, ex-nay the codes.
Yeah,
And
right.
this is why it's great to work with the architect who knows all of our code issues. Absolutely a must. So, but I'm talking only storage ideas.
Keep going.
But jump in anytime. I want you
Really
to
pushed his
yeah,
button.
I know. I didn't mean to push your button.
It was okay. There was just like 3 in a row that were.
Well, it's
Oh my
because I
God.
like the storage ideas.
I agree. I love the storage under the stairs. It's just got to be done properly.
Right. These are built-in bunk beds.
Yeah.
Okay.
That ladder.
Another, if you
That's-
needed to
that's
have, extra
Okay.
space.
All right.
And then the other thing I just want to talk about is I really think doors can create more open floor space. You can have swing doors, or pocket doors are a great option, just because it just doesn't, take up floor space where you need wall space to put a dresser or something. Then the pocket door goes away into the wall. I think those are great to use in granny flats. This is just another option if you wanted a full set of washer dryers that you could have in the kitchen area. We're kind of doing something like this in Lynn's, where we kind of have a bar in the kitchen with the washer and dryer below. I think doing small double doors is also good for closets and so forth, again, to maximize our floor space. Full height closets are also, if you can take them up to the ceiling. Slider doors, they just really let you access full height in your closet opposed to a lower door. So that's just some examples of that. Ladders with full height to the ceiling. And then last, I love this little idea of, and I've done this before in many projects where we do a drawer in the kitchen kicks for extra storage. And all these custom things cost more money. So you just need to be aware that that's where that's at. And then I just want to wrap up by saying, if you're want to know when and how to use an interior designer, I really highly recommend, if you do want to bring a designer in, to do that with the architect, have it be kind of from the beginning of the project, so you're kind of working hand in hand. If your budget doesn't allow that, then you can definitely meet with an interior designer, just for brief consultations. It could be just to help you come up with kind of conceptual ideas of what you want and where you want to take it, and what some of your needs might be. So you can just do a couple hours, or work with an interior designer if you want help on finishes. And those could just be at an hourly rate, or, less time. But you can also have a designer from beginning to all the way through construction, but it's of course more costly. So I think a lot of people don't know the limitations. I mean, it can be a 2-hour consultation to working all the way through the project. So,
Great.
Okay, so that's it.
Thank you guys, both of you. So there's been a lot of questions being put in, and so we'll definitely get to your guys' questions. So I've got a couple more slides, and while I'm talking, if you guys want to think about what your questions are and submit those in the comments, we'll address as many questions as we can. And I just have a couple more slides here, so I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about what your next steps are. So you guys have heard all these different design ideas and kind of gotten excited about projects. You know that this Title 24 thing is changing, so there's kind of this urge for a lot of people to try to get projects started. So if you're interested in building a granny flat or an accessory dwelling unit, regardless of whether it's a garage conversion or a standalone unit, or you want to build something above a garage, Maxable can help you get started. So we offer paid site consultations that are designed to help you understand holistically the entire process. What are the regulations and the permitting? We do research specific to your property. We come out to your house and sit down at your home and go over all the information with you. We have a packet of materials that's kind of a deeper dive into topics we think are important. And then obviously you have ongoing support from our Maxable team. So if you have questions that pop up and you're like, Caitlin, I didn't know about this, what should I do? We're there to support you. Here's some of the topics we typically cover in site consultations, but again, we can cover any, one of the things we ask for is, hey, what questions do you have specific to your project, and how can we get you answers for those? So anything related to your address, regulations and permit questions, realistic cost estimates, how to maximize tax deductions on projects like this, information on how to be a landlord or how to maximize ROI. So there's all these different topics that we can cover within a site consultation. So without further ado, I want to jump into the Q&A portion of this. So we've had a lot of questions come in, and I'm going to read some of them out loud here. Let's see where all the questions are. Okay, so we'll start with, again, we have more questions coming in, so we'll try to get to as many as we can. So first question, do decks and stairs count in the square footage?
So this is something that is city dependent. Every city has something different that they count towards area that you're able to develop. In the city of San Diego, it's called floor area ratio, or FAR. And so it all depends on how covered it is. If it's covered on more than 3 sides, then it's something that's counted in your floor area ratio, and that's something that counts towards the max you can build on a lot. As far as the square footage of the unit, I haven't seen any cities that actually count decks or exterior stairs as a part of the unit. The only issue becomes when you have enclosed stairs, has to count towards something. So we've had ADUs that are built off of a garage, and we have been able to incorporate the stairwell into the upstairs unit as a part of the garage and the store, that occupancy rather than as a part of the unit. And so that kind of has helped us build a bigger unit upstairs. But it all comes down to individual city regulations.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah. And so essentially, if it's enclosed, generally it'll be counted, with those 3 walls, generally it's going to be counted towards your floor area or your square footage. But if it's just like an open outdoor thing, like you could build a patio or you could build a deck, and it's not going to be counted towards the square footage.
The other thing really quick is that decks are also restricted in a lot of cities in areas where you might be able to build an ADU. So you might be able to build an ADU in the setbacks in certain cities, but a lot of times you can't build a deck in the setbacks. So.
Yeah, great. So someone has a question about being able to build or take an Airstream and put it in the backyard and rent it out as like an Airbnb or something. So they listed La Mesa specifically as a question, but I just want to kind of address this across the board. We kind of touched on this already. You can't just take you can't just plop something down in the backyard that doesn't have a permanent foundation and isn't built to code and have people live in it. So that's,
and it's more about who is inspecting it and who it's built to, what code it's built to. So an Airstream is built as a trailer and is permitted by the DMV. So an Airstream is not a dwelling unit. Whether or not a city allows those to be Airbnb, that's a completely different issue. But if it has wheels and is not connected to a permanent foundation or permanent, sewage, waste management, permanent power, that's not an accessory dwelling unit.
right. Okay, another question is, when we say garage conversion, does it mean we will need to use some of the existing garage, or can we demolish the existing and build a completely new one?
So a garage conversion can mean a lot of things in a lot of different cities. That when the state law was changed, it was really simple because no one had come up with any compliant rules yet. So we were operating under the state law. And so while everything is now much better than it was prior to 2017, there are a lot of local restrictions that are in place. So in the case of a garage conversion, the most typical situation is that you're going to have to at least say that you're utilizing a portion of that structure. In certain cities, you're allowed to, demolish it and rebuild it in the same location. But it comes down to what that individual city determines to be an existing space, as well as, if you're in a coastal zone or something like that, there's obviously other restrictions.
Great. So this next question I have for Lydia, when you were designing the garage conversion on my mom's property, what were some of the design considerations that you took into account to try to make the space feel less like it was just a converted garage and more like it had always been there?
Well, most of that was kind of exterior, budget-wise, we were trying to work with existing openings where windows were and putting windows back into the same place, not adding costs that way. And same with the garage door and the front door. It was like, we're going to remove this giant garage door and we're going to put, a front door and some French doors. So kind of using the existing openings and then working with it. And we kept the interior wall where it already was and then built closets and things off of that wall. Storage kind of worked that way. So it was really, about keeping it as minimal as possible, but having, an open space and it feeling inviting and trying to meet Lynn's needs of what she wanted in that space, for her immediate thing is she doesn't need to rent it. She kind of wanted it for a workspace and guest quarters. So working within her desires, were kind of, what's at the boundaries for where we're going with it,
Right.
So yeah.
Right. And
So,
really colorful, and we had
Yeah.
like white brick on a couple of walls,
Yeah.
and we wanted it,
Yeah.
you know, we have 8-foot closets, and all the closets are different colors, and
Yeah, and now it's like Lynn had ideas about this, so we just
Right.
worked together and collaborated to give her what she wanted and then have it work as far as adding
Right.
additional storage and, you know, just different details,
right.
which
And we had
hopefully
like
people see.
handmade mid-century looking tiles that are like amazing, and we picked one that Caitlin liked.
Yeah. So it's very personal is what the point is.
It's
It's very
really-
customized for Lynn's needs.
And one thing that I don't think people realize, and I don't know if Lynn or Lydia realize this, but by raising that floor, you know, what we did is in order to get all the drainage out and get all of the plumbing out, we built it on a platform. And what that does is it makes it feel more like a raised foundation.
Exactly.
Space. It doesn't feel like a garage because you're not, you know,
That's
stomping on that slab.
Mhm.
And so it creates a softer feel to the floor.
Right. It does.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we also
yeah.
had a step up to the bedroom, so
Right.
it's not a flat. We had that discussion.
And we
do
have
you want
the
to have it a
ADA,
flat
whether we
ADA?
want it
And
level.
we said, no,
Yeah.
we don't want to do the ADA. We
Right.
want a step up.
Right. Right.
And then we had
Right.
really funky tile
Yeah.
in the bedroom that
Right.
looks like African
Yeah.
mud cloth. That's really cool. I mean,
Yeah.
people just go in there and go, oh my gosh.
Well, this is because, you know, again, it's working with what Lance wants.
Right.
She wanted it custom and fun and colorful and happy, and because she's going to work out there every
Right.
day.
Yeah.
And she, yeah,
I fought for the ADA compliant thing
right.
for
Right.
this unit,
Yes,
and I lost that discussion.
Yeah. We're
Yes.
like, hey, it's
Jared,
fun.
I feel your pain when these difficult clients, aka your mom, don't want to listen to your advice.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
she does. She has a cute little half step into the bedroom, and it does give it kind of a fun warmth and feel to
And we can put a little ramp there. Our doors
Yeah,
are
I'm
not
not
quite
ready for
rad enough,
for
but
the
yeah.
Wheelchair or the, you know, the cane
Yeah.
yet, but
She was one that said she'd go back and retrofit if she needed to. So, you know, and you have to kind of work with
Yeah.
what your client wants.
Yeah,
That's the
it's-
whole
it
point.
doesn't look anything
Yeah.
like a.
You're right.
It's not my unit.
Yeah, that's right.
also-
It's your unit.
Exactly.
unit.
Not mine. It's working with
And
what the
it's
client
also
wants.
lofted ceilings.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was really fun that we
It's
got to.
incredible
yeah.
lofted ceilings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We took boards from the original
Old
garage
yeah.
and then covered the beams. I mean, it's
Right.
amazing.
We recycled. We
Yeah.
did a lot of recycling with the interior lumber from the garage
Mhm.
unit and used it in the
Yeah.
new construction.
Can you see how excited I am?
And
so
then-
if
Yeah.
we can tell.
this granny flat, you need to see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Just say,
Yeah.
Recycling is great, but it's not always the cheapest way
that's
to
true,
go.
too.
It's
And
very,
it's not always going to be allowed.
yeah. So it's just for board shelves and things
Yes.
like that. So
Yeah, so I recently flew to Portland because they had a big ADU tour up in Portland. There were 17 units that I got to walk through and tour, and it was really funny. I mean, it was really cool to see so many accessory dwelling units finished and in one place. And some of the design themes that I think really stuck out for me were storage, storage, storage.
mhm.
How can we maximize, you know, like Lydia was saying, under stairs, can we put storage and utilize that space? Can we use pocket doors to minimize openings? A lot of these units, to make them feel bigger and more airy and light, really utilized windows in a wonderful way. So looking at not just skylights in the unit or big French doors, but also having clear story windows. So, and thinking about what views do you want to maximize or minimize. So if you want to maintain privacy between your main house and your accessory dwelling unit, where are you placing the windows, and thinking about where is the bulk of your time being spent inside the main house. So if you have, you know, a kitchen that faces out into your backyard, you know, maybe placing the accessory dwelling unit offset from that main house, so that if you're out cooking, you know, you're cooking in the kitchen, you're not looking straight into a wall all the time. And then
Right.
same with the accessory dwelling unit. How can you maximize your good views and minimize your bad views? So these are all kind of considerations that architects take into account when they're designing and placing the unit on your property.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of questions on here that are about regulation specific topics. And I would say that 80% of them can get answered in that ADU regulations portal. So asking, for example, someone said, you know, how can you, like if you're converting a garage, how do you account then for that parking? So if you're within half a mile of public transit, you don't have to put in parking spaces for your accessory dwelling unit, with the caveat that if you are converting a garage, you need to replace the parking that you're taking away with the garage conversion. Now, here's the good news for people, and this was the case in my mom's property, is that if we have to put in 2 parking spots because you're converting a 2-car garage on the property, those 2 parking spots the existing driveway can count towards your quota. And the parking spots can even be tandem. It can even count tandem in the driveway. So in my mom's case, she had a long enough driveway that we didn't really have to, even though we were converting the garage, we didn't have to worry about the parking requirement. So just to address that. Another question is, can you add a fence across the lot to divide the ADU from your front house?
Yeah, almost always. The only restriction is typically going to be a height restriction. But yeah, I mean, that's key in a lot of units to make sure there's privacy. Obviously, it depends on your use, but if it's a rental or you're living in it and the primary is a rental, then yeah, absolutely.
And one of the units that I just toured in Portland, they had a really fantastic example of this, and I'm excited because we're doing 5 video ADU tours out of this. So we filmed at a bunch of the different units, and we're going to be producing videos for you guys to see. And one of the units had a really clever kind of fence design between the 2 units that, because of the way they had landscaped it and kind of designed the fence, it really just felt like completely separate parts of the property. So yeah, you absolutely can put a fence in there and think through, you know, where are you going to place your landscaping and your trees to kind of maximize privacy. Let's see, more questions. Someone says, I have an existing garage I'd like to convert, but it's pretty damaged and right against the property line. Does it make more sense to keep the roof and rebuild it, or to keep the footprint, or tear it down into a new construction or even a prefab unit?
Yeah, so again, this comes back to individual city regulations. Like in the city of San Diego, we can build a new garage. We can build a new garage in the setbacks. We can build a single-story ADU in the setbacks. The only time where we really have issues is when we're trying to go above a new garage. We can't really encroach into the setbacks. There's also a lot of things that are continually changing, but realistically, it comes down to what city you're in and how that city is going to view the garage conversions. Because when the state law was passed, they were trying to say, like, hey, you can convert any existing structure. Like, they wanted to make it simple. They wanted to make it easy. But every city has found some way of trying to restrict these. What the state law was intending. So that's why there continues to be new bills going through the state legislature to try to fix that. But yeah, it's going to come down city dependent. The other thing that I see a lot of questions about is about design style and whether or not you have to match the existing style, architectural style of the house. And this is, again, a city-specific issue. In County of San Diego, the Chula Vista is the one that sticks out in my mind off the top of my head that does require the same architectural style. But for most cities across San Diego County, they don't require you to match that architectural style.
And I think generally with matching architectural styles, also it's going to be dependent if you're in a historically designated neighborhood.
Yeah.
There could be additional restrictions, like if you're in an historically designated neighborhood, there could be restrictions around that exterior style and having to match that to the main house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of individual, city requirements.
Okay, so let's see. What else? Oh, someone asked, how much are the site consultations? So we mentioned briefly before, site consultations are where we do research for your property for you. So if you have questions about permitting or regulations, or you're unsure where to start or how much something's going to cost, we kind of look at the whole project holistically, walk through all of the options, do research with the city, and then we sit down with you on your property, help you measure your site, and walk through everything. That service is $249.
I see a question about template ADUs that I'd be happy to discuss.
Yeah.
We hear a lot of questions about pre-approved ADUs or template ADUs, and realistically, a template or a pre-approved ADU is going to be one that is 99% of the time not cost effective for that site. And the reason why is because it's been designed to the most stringent standards to work in the most areas possible. So there's that one area that is, fits the most restrictive seismic, wind, and Tile 24, energy compliance. But for 99% of them, they're not going to be the most cost effective. So especially for someone who's doing this, I see a question about rehabbers appealing to most demographics. Realistically, the most cost effective ADU is going to be a conversion of an existing structure, so a garage conversion, and then really a well designed site specific ADU is going to be your most cost effective and quickest way through a permitting process, and able to get you in and out the quickest.
Yeah, and I would say that when you're thinking about ADUs and costs are going to vary depending on what city. So the cost to build an ADU in Los Angeles is very different than the cost to build a unit in San Jose. The first 400 square feet are always going to be your most expensive because there's fixed costs associated with these projects, and there's all of the complications of building a regular size house but on a much smaller footprint. So you're not getting economies of scale, and you're also not able to amortize the cost of your expensive square footage over, let's say having 4 bedrooms or a large living room or something like that. There's a couple other questions here I want to get to, and then we're going to wrap it up. Someone asked about owner occupancy requirements in Los Angeles. In LA, it's not required to be owner occupied. So if you have the opportunity to rent both your main house and your accessory dwelling unit, you do not need to live on the property. And then someone else had a question about San Jose. And since I live in San Jose, I definitely want to give a shout out to them. So in San Jose, they asked about the fire department rules and regulations. So yes, in San Jose, there are very strict regulations about how far your ADU can be placed from a fire hydrant. And a lot of times it's going to involve putting in fire sprinklers, unfortunately. And fire sprinklers are a big expense that you want to try to avoid at all costs.
But they're not as cost prohibitive as they used to be.
Well, but up here, it's still a $20,000 line item because a lot of times you're not just putting in the fire sprinklers, but you're also having to upgrade the water meter. And so anyway, I would like to save $20,000 if I could save $20,000 on a project. So that's one thing to note about San Jose. However, Mayor Liccardo is coming out with a kind of a new initiative where he wants to have 5,000 ADUs built in San Jose in the next 5 years. And he hasn't officially announced the initiative yet. So I think that we will see some softening of restrictions potentially in the future, but that's not where we're at right now. So any other pressing questions that we need to answer before we all sign off?
I'm not reading them. I can't see them.
Are you have any final words?
Okay, let's see.
There's some question about coastal. So coastal commission is going to come down to your individual city. Again, every city has a different coastal plan. City of San Diego still requires coastal development permits. I don't know how it is up in Northern California and up in LA area, but every city is a little bit different. Again, HOAs are still the last point of local control. And then really quick, it's just, understand that, I've heard some people talk about how the code changes next year are, we're not trying to scare you guys into trying to get a project up and going. We're trying to let you know what's going to be the next, what's going to be required in the next couple of years, and especially in January. City of San Diego, I'd really like to encourage you guys to get moving on projects, because not only is it a code change year, which means December is incredibly busy, but City of San Diego is also moving their development services department in November, which means that everything is going to be insane at the end of the year. I don't know why. We're working with the city on a couple of options for contingencies, but if it's not in before the end of the year, it doesn't get to utilize the current code cycle and the current energy requirements. So please, please, please don't wait until the last minute. Get your project started and let's get going.
So thank you guys, everyone. I just want to read one last comment because it's going to give my mom a real kick. Mom, someone just gave you a shout out for helping you connect their daughter to McAllister College.
Because I am not a granny flat expert. My daughter is, but I am a college expert. So I love it when people, and I do my own freaking webinar. So I love it when people come, tell me, oh, I helped you, I help them, find a college, because my own website is thecollegesolution.com. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It's funny. I called my mom. I said, Mom, we had over 300 people register for the webinar. She said, oh, honey, that's so great. I had 900 people register for mine. I said, okay, wow. Well, I got some ways to go.
But I had no webinar when I was your age, so I'm impressed by what you've done.
So at any rate, thank you everyone for joining us. If these webinars are something you enjoy, let us know so that we can schedule more of them. Extra big thanks to Lydia and Jared for taking time out of their evening to chat with us and educate us further. And hopefully we'll see some of you guys at our event in San Diego this weekend.
Come to my house, my granny house.
Come to my mom's house. And then for those of you in Los Angeles and Bay Area, we're definitely planning more event type stuff for you guys as well. So, sit tight and keep an eye out for that. So thank you guys again.
We'll have a table for you. If you want to talk college, we'll put Lynn at a table.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you guys, everyone, again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. Bye-bye.
Bye.